Good morning, students. This is Afrin Sayyed. Welcome to Atmiya Green School. I'm teaching you English. Today I'll start with the chapter The Scholarship Jacket. It is from your book New Paths, Chapter 1, Section 2. Before I start the chapter, I would like to give you a short summary or introduction about the chapter. Students, each of us live a dream. We have goals in our life. We have some motives in our life which we always wanted to achieve. Now, sometimes we are so much dedicated to those goals and dreams that we are not ready to give up on those dreams at any cost. No matter whatever we have to do, no matter how much hard we have to work, no matter what the cost it requires to pay, but we want to live the dream one day at any cost. Just like that, in the story The Scholarship Jacket by Martha Salinas, this author talks about an experience she had herself as a 14-year-old girl. Marta is a shy Mexican girl who is striving for a jacket. In the Texas high school Marta attended, there was a scholarship jacket that was given to valedictorian of the school or the student of the school who got the best grades over 8 years of school. Marta was sure the jacket was hers, as her sister had received, and also because she had gotten straight A's since the first. She always scored grade A. Then, by coincidence, when she heard the conversation between her teachers arguing about her scholarship jacket, she feels terrible as she wants and she deserves the jacket. The next day she feels nervous and sad as the principal tells her that the jacket is now 15 US dollar and not for free. He asks her to bring her the money next day, but her grandfather, who is very poor, says no. Martha is heartbroken at the sound of the news. When you know that you have always lived for that dream, when you know that you want to achieve it at any cost, and suddenly one day you realize that you are so close to your dream, but still you'll not be able to achieve the dream. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ऐसा होता है ना कभी कभार कि हम लोग आइसक्रीम खाने के लिए गए और आइसक्रीम पार्लर बंद हो गया तो कितना बुरा लगता है इट मेक्स यू फील सैड just like that the ice cream is the jacket which Marta wants, and when she reached so close to it she realized that she needs to pay for it, but it is not fair. Now Marta is heartbroken at the sound of the news and with the despair tells the principal he could give it to the girl whose father is an influential man in the community, unlike Marta's grandfather, a farmer. At the sound of this, principal reconsiders and gives her the jacket for free. She feels extremely happy and overjoyed. On the book, The Scholarship Jacket by Marta Salinas, I think that the theme is truth. During the book, there are various situations where the truth is involved provoked. When Marta is talking about scholarship jacket, she knows for sure that she will get the jacket. She knows it's the truth. At the point where Marta hears her teachers arguing, she knows the truth is that just because her guardians are not considered important or they are not from the high standard society. Also, in the point where the grandfather days, if it is scholarship jacket, then why should it cost anything? Marta knows that this reasoning is truth. Lastly, when the principal hears Marta talk about the other girl, he realizes the truth is that Marta won the jacket. It is important to learn from the story that whatever the truth it is, it can never be changed. Okay, if Marta would have paid for that jacket, then it would might have not the reward of her hard work, but it might be just a bribe which is given to earn something. And what her grandfather did to by refusing not to give the money and asking. for the jacket without a single penny because she deserved it. And it was a scholarship jacket after all. That was something which was very true. This was a very important lesson which this chapter had made us learn. This was a short summary which I gave you regarding the class. Now I want you to go through the entire video in this class.
By Marta Salinas. The small Texas school that I went to had a tradition carried out every year during the 8th grade graduation. A beautiful golden green jacket, the school colors, was awarded to the class valedictorian, the student who had maintained the highest grades for 8 years. The scholarship jacket had a big gold S on the left front side and your name written in gold letters on the pocket. My oldest sister, Rosie, had won the jacket a few years back, and I fully expected to also. I was 14 and in the 8th grade. I had been a straight A student since the 1st grade, and this last year had looked forward very much to owning that jacket. My father was a farm laborer who couldn't earn enough money to feed 8 children, so when I was 6, I was given to my grandparents to raise. We couldn't participate in sports at school because there were registration fees, uniform costs, and trips out of town. So even though our family was quite agile and athletic, there would never be a school sports jacket for us. This one, the scholarship jacket, was our only chance. In May, close to graduation, spring fever had struck as usual with a vengeance. No one paid any attention in class. Instead, we stared out the windows and at each other, wanting to speed up the last few weeks of school. I despaired every time I looked in the mirror. Pencil thin, not a curve anywhere. I was called beanpole and string bean, and I knew that's what I looked like. A flat chest, no hips, and a brain. That's
She was not a beautiful girl, but she was always a very intelligent girl.
what I had. That really wasn't much for a 14-year-old to work with, I thought, as I absent-mindedly wandered from my history class to the gym. Another hour of sweating in basketball and displaying my toothpick legs was coming up. Then I remembered my PE shorts were still in a bag under my desk where I had forgotten them. I had to walk all the way back and get them. Coach Thompson was a real bear if someone wasn't dressed for PE. She had said I was a good forward and even tried to talk Grandma into letting me join the team once. Of course, Grandma said no. I was almost back at my classroom door when I heard voices raised in anger as if in some sort of argument. I stopped. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just hesitated, not knowing what to do. I needed those shorts, and I was going to be late. But I didn't want to interrupt an argument between my teachers. I recognized the voices. Mr. Schmidt, my history teacher, and Mr. Boone, my math teacher. They seemed to be arguing about me. I couldn't believe it. I still remember the feeling of shock that rooted me flat against the wall as if I were trying to blend in with the graffiti written there. I refuse to do it. I don't care who her father is. Her grades don't even begin to compare to Martha's. I won't lie or falsify records. Martha has a straight A plus average and you know it. That was Mr. Schmidt, and he sounded very angry. Mr. Boone's voice sounded calm and quiet. Look, Joanne's father is not only on the board, he owns the only store in town. We could say it was a close tie and... The pounding in my ears drowned out the rest of the words. Only a word here and there filtered through. Martha's Mexican. Resign. Won't do it. Mr. Schmidt came rushing out, and luckily for me, went down the opposite way toward the auditorium, so he didn't see me. Shaking, I waited a few minutes, and then went in and grabbed my bag and fled from the room. Mr. Boone looked up when I came in, but didn't say anything. To this day, I don't remember if I got in trouble in PE for being late, or how I made it through the rest of the afternoon. I went home very sad and cried into my pillow that night so grandmother wouldn't hear me. It seemed a cruel coincidence that I had overheard that conversation. The next day, when the principal called me into his office, I knew what it would be about. He looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it any easier for him, so I looked him straight in the eyes. He looked away and fidgeted with the papers on his desk. "Martha," he said, "there's been a change in the policy this year regarding the scholarship jacket. As you know, it has always been free." He cleared his throat and continued. "This year, the board has decided to charge $15, which still won't cover the complete cost of the jacket." I stared at him in shock, and a small sound of dismay escaped my throat. I hadn't expected this. He still avoided looking in my eyes. "So, if you are unable to pay the $15 for the jacket, it will be given to the next one in line." I didn't need to ask who that was. Standing with all the dignity I could muster, I said,
The girl will get the ticket if she's not able to pay. Miss Marta will not able to pay the price. The girl who is going to get the jacket belongs to a higher upper class of the society. And is this fair enough? That if person belongs to a higher upper class of the society, then they got the right or they got something which is of someone else.
"I'll speak to my grandfather about it, sir, and I'll let you know tomorrow." I cried on the walk home from the bus stop. The dirt road was a quarter mile from the highway, so by the time I got home, my eyes were red and puffy. "Where's Grandpa?" I asked Grandma, looking down at the floor so she wouldn't ask me why I'd been crying. She was sewing on a quilt, as usual, and didn't look up. "I think he's out back, working in the bean field." I went outside and looked out at the fields. There he was. I could see him walking between the rows, his body bent over the little plants, hoe in hand. I walked slowly out to him, trying to think how I could best ask him for the money. There was a cool breeze blowing and a sweet smell of mesquite fruit in the air, but I didn't appreciate it. I kicked at a dirt clod. I wanted that jacket so much. It was more than just being a valedictorian and giving a little thank you speech for the jacket on graduation night. It represented 8 years of hard work and expectation. I knew I had to be honest with Grandpa. It was my only chance. He saw my shadow and looked up. He waited for me to speak. I cleared my throat nervously and clasped my hands behind my back so he wouldn't see them shaking. "Grandpa, I have a big favor to ask you," I said in Spanish, the only language he knew. He still waited silently. I tried again. "Grandpa, this year the principal said the scholarship jacket is not going to be free. It's going to cost $15, and I have to take the money in tomorrow, otherwise it will be given to someone else." The last words came out in an eager rush. Grandpa straightened up tiredly and leaned his chin on the hoe handle. He looked out over the field that was filled with the tiny green bean plants. I waited, desperately hoping he'd say I could have the money.
She was expecting that her his grandfather, will say yes, and he will say he will be agreed to pay the amount which her principal was asking for to pay. But he refused.
He turned to me and asked quietly, "What does the scholarship jacket mean?" I answered quickly. Maybe there was a chance. "It means you've earned it by having the highest grades for 8 years, and that's why they're giving it to you." Too late, I realized the significance of my words. Grandpa knew that I understood it was not a matter of money. It wasn't that. He went back to hoeing the weeds that sprang up between the delicate little bean plants. It was a time-consuming job. Sometimes the small shoots were right next to each other. Finally, he spoke again as I turned to leave crying. "Then if you pay for it, Marta, it is not a scholarship jacket, is it?" Tell your principal I will not pay the $15. I walked back to the house and locked myself in the bathroom for a long time. I was angry with grandfather, even though I knew he was right. And I was angry with the board, whoever they were. Why did they have to change the rules just when it was my turn to win the jacket? Those were the days of belief and innocence. It was a very sad and withdrawn girl who dragged into the principal's office the next day. This time he did look me in the eyes. What did your grandfather say? I sat very straight in my chair. He said to tell you he won't pay the $15. The principal muttered something I couldn't understand under his breath and walked over to the window. He stood looking out at something outside. He looked bigger than usual when he stood up. He was a tall, gaunt man with gray hair, and I watched the back of his head while I waited for him to speak. Why? He finally asked. Your grandfather has the money. He owns a 200-acre ranch. I looked at him, forcing my eyes to stay dry. I know, sir, but he said if I had to pay for it, then it wouldn't be a scholarship jacket. I stood up to leave. I guess you'll just have to give it to Joanne. I hadn't meant to say that. It had just slipped out. I was almost at the door when he stopped me. Martha, wait. I turned and looked at him waiting. What did he want now? I could feel my heart pounding loudly in my chest and see my blouse fluttering where my breast should have been. Something bitter and vile tasting was coming up in my mouth. I was afraid I was going to be sick. I didn't need any sympathy speeches. He sighed loudly and went back to his big desk. He watched me, biting his lip. Okay. We'll make an exception in your case. I'll tell the board you'll get your jacket. I could hardly believe my ears. I spoke in a trembling rush. Oh, thank you, sir. Suddenly, I felt great. I didn't know about adrenaline in those days, but I knew something was pumping through me, making me feel as tall as the sky. I wanted to yell, jump, run the mile, do something. I ran out so I could cry in the hall where there was no one to see me. At the end of the day, Mr. Schmidt winked at me and said, I hear you're getting the scholarship jacket this year. His face looked as happy and innocent as a baby's, but I knew better. Without answering, I gave him a quick hug and ran to the bus. I cried on the walk home again, but this time because I was so happy.
The feeling when you know that now finally the dream which you were dreaming since your childhood is now finally going to come true is something very precious and something very heartwarming. And just like that, today Marta was feeling that she has achieved everything in her life. She had got everything which she had dreamt of. She is being blessed with everything she always wanted, and today she is happiest girl. She feels most blessed. And this is how our story goes on.
I couldn't wait to tell Grandpa and ran straight to the field. I joined him in the row where he was working, and without saying anything, I crouched down and started pulling up the weeds with my hands. Grandpa worked alongside me for a few minutes, and he didn't ask what had happened. After I had a little pile of weeds between the rows, I stood up and faced him. The principal said he's making an exception for me, Grandpa, and I'm getting the jacket after all. That's after I told him what you said. Grandpa didn't say anything. He just gave me a pat on the shoulder and a smile. He pulled out the crumpled red handkerchief that he always carried in his back pocket and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Better go see if your grandmother needs any help with supper. I gave him a big grin. He didn't fool me. I skipped and ran back to the house whistling some silly tune. The Scholarship Jacket by Marta.
Okay, so the story was interesting enough and very, very useful, which gave a lifelong lesson that when you have dreamt something for your life, you'll definitely get it if you work with lots of loyalty and dedication. So students, I hope you have enjoyed the class and you were able to understand everything which I have taught you. Thank you so much students. Stay safe, stay happy.